My friend, let's call her Brenda the tirelessly optimistic, had this truly inspired idea. "Borneo!" she proclaimed, eyes sparkling with an almost unsettling fervor. "Fireflies!" she added, as if this explained everything. I, of course, was immediately overcome with enthusiasm. You can practically taste the sarcasm, can't you? It's as thick as the Borneo humidity I was soon to experience. But Brenda possesses a unique brand of persuasive charm. Or perhaps it's just relentless nagging. Either way, Borneo it was. All for the sake of some insects with illuminated posteriors. Because clearly my life was lacking in tiny blinking lights and the company of exotic creepy crawlies. This was going to be an adventure of a lifetime. Her words, naturally. I just hoped this lifetime adventure included decent Wi-Fi and minimal sweating. The rainforest. Well, it was certainly green. An almost aggressive shade of green, actually. Everywhere you looked, more green. And wet. Did I happen to mention it was wet? Because it was. Exceptionally wet. Water seemed to drip from every leaf, every branch, every conceivable surface. It was like walking through a giant lukewarm car wash, only without the pleasant scent of cheap soap. My shoes, which I had foolishly thought were waterproof, made squelching noises that sounded suspiciously like tiny drowning animals. This was nature in its raw, unfiltered glory. Apparently glory is quite damp and smells faintly of mildew. Who knew? I certainly didn't sign up for this level of immersive dampness. And the sounds. Oh, the symphony of the jungle. It wasn't the gentle birdsong and rustling leaves you hear on those calming nature apps. Not even close. It was more like 1,000 tiny, unseen creatures simultaneously practicing their avant-garde jazz compositions. Buzzes, clicks, chirps, and a few noises that sounded suspiciously like something sharpening tiny knives. Our guide assured us it was all perfectly normal. The vibrant sounds of the ecosystem, he called it. I called it mildly terrifying. Every snap of a twig made me jump. I was convinced a jaguar, or at least a very large squirrel, was about to pounce. My nerves were already frayed, and we hadn't even seen a single firefly yet. This was supposed to be relaxing, they wouldn't be wrong. The recommended attire for this jungle escapade was, in a word, hilarious. Long sleeves, long pants. In this oppressive heat, genius. The logic was to protect against insects and scratches. I might combust from heatstroke before any mosquito bit me. I reluctantly donned the layers, feeling like a sausage. Every movement was a struggle against the damp material. Fashion took a back seat to not being eaten alive. Insect repellent became my new signature fragrance. Eau de Deet. The mosquitoes viewed it as a mildly spicy marinade. I'd swat one and 3 more would appear. They had tiny maps marking me as a buffet. Ah, the sturdy hiking boots, so rugged, so sensible. In the rainforest, they became mobile mud spas. Each step was accompanied by a deeply unsatisfying squelch. I felt like I was dragging half the jungle floor. The next stage of our grand firefly pursuit involved a boat. A traditional longboat, our guide announced with a proud flourish. I think traditional was a polite euphemism for slightly wobbly and prone to making alarming creaking noises. It was long, narrow, and sat disconcertingly low in the water. Getting in was an exercise in awkward contortion, trying not to capsize the entire vessel and end up face first in the murky depths. The engine sputtered to life with a cough and a wheeze, sounding like it was as enthusiastic about this trip as I was, which is to say, not very. But it moved, slowly, very slowly. Progress was measured in geological time, it seemed. The river itself was brown, a deep, opaque, muddy brown, like a giant flowing vat of chocolate milk, if chocolate milk harbored unseen aquatic creatures and the occasional floating log. The mighty Kinabatangan River, the guide intoned. Mighty it may have been, but majestic it was not. At least not from my vantage point, which was mostly focused on not accidentally dipping my hand into the mysterious brown liquid. Section 5 Wildlife Encounters, definitely not petting zoo material, monkeys. There were monkeys, lots of them actually, proboscis monkeys with their comically large noses and long-tailed macaques looking mischievous. From a safe distance perched high in the trees, they were quite charming, almost cute. Then we got a bit closer. Their charm began to fade, replaced by an unnerving intelligence in their eyes. They looked like tiny furry bandits, sizing us up, probably assessing the likelihood of successfully snatching a camera or a loose snack. One particularly bold macaque stared directly at me, and I swear it was mentally cataloging the contents of my day pack. I clutched it tighter. No way, monkey, my emergency chocolate bar is staying with me. Snakes. Our guide mentioned them. casually, as if discussing the weather. Oh yes, many snakes in Borneo. Pythons, cobras, vipers. Very beautiful. Beautiful? I think our definitions of beauty differed significantly. Thankfully, or perhaps disappointingly for the more adventurous souls, I didn't actually see any snakes, which frankly was perfectly fine by me. My reaction to an unexpected snake encounter would likely involve a scream that could curdle milk, and possibly cause a minor international incident. The thought of one slithering nearby was enough to keep me on high alert, scanning every branch and shadow with a paranoia usually reserved for spotting an X in public. Ignorance in this case was absolute bliss. Bugs, so many bugs. I thought I'd experienced bugs before, I was wrong. Section 6. The elusive glow. Are we there yet, or is this a prank? As dusk began to settle, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a certain anticipation started to build, or maybe it was just hunger pangs. It was hard to tell at this point. The light faded with surprising speed, the dense jungle canopy swallowing the last rays of sun. Our guide steered the boat towards a specific stretch of riverbank, his earlier chattiness replaced by a focused silence. "This is a good spot," he whispered, as if the fireflies might be spooked by normal conversation volumes. We waited, and waited. The air grew cooler, the sounds of the nocturnal jungle amplifying around us, ominously, or perhaps just naturally. My sarcasm was still fighting for dominance over genuine curiosity. More waiting ensued. We drifted silently on the rickety boat, enveloped by the growing darkness. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of water against the hull, and the incessant, high-pitched whine of mosquitoes discovering fresh patches of unprotected skin. "Patience is a virtue," someone wise once said. That person clearly never waited for elusive insects in a humid, bug-infested swamp while their stomach rumbled a protest song. I was starting to wonder if this whole firefly thing was an elaborate practical joke played on unsuspecting tourists. Yes, come to Borneo, we have darkness and bugs. It seemed plausible. Section 7. Firefly Fantasia. Okay, maybe it was worth it. A tiny bit. Then, just as my cynicism reached its peak, I saw it. A single, tiny flicker. A pinprick of light against the inky blackness of the riverside trees. For a moment I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Perhaps it was a stray spark from a distant village or a reflection. Sleep deprivation and bug spray fumes can do strange things to one's perception after all. I blinked, trying to clear my vision. Was it real, or was I just desperately willing it to be real, to justify this entire, ridiculous expedition? I held my breath, not daring to hope too much. This whole trip hinged on these little glowing insects. No pressure, bugs, another flicker, and then another, and then, as if a silent signal had been given, the trees along the riverbank began to come alive. Slowly at first, then with increasing intensity, thousands upon thousands of tiny lights began to twinkle. They weren't random flashes, they pulsed, in unison. The entire stretch of mangrove trees transformed into a living, breathing constellation. It was actually magical. Don't tell anyone I admitted that. My carefully constructed wall of sarcasm crumbled, just a little. The sheer, unexpected beauty of it was disarming. The air was still, the only sound the gentle lapping of the water against our boat, and the soft, collective sigh from our group. Section 8. The journey back. Still sarcastic, marginally enchanted. The magical interlude began to fade, not the fireflies, but our time with them. Our guide gently turned the boat around. Back towards the distant, dim lights of civilization. Back to reality. And of course, back to the mosquitoes. They greeted my exposed ankles like long-lost friends. Or, more accurately, like an unattended buffet. The enchantment was already being nibbled away at the edges. There was a quiet sort of contentment on the boat during the return journey. Or perhaps it was just collective exhaustion. The earlier tension and skepticism had evaporated, replaced by a shared appreciation for what we'd witnessed. Even I felt a sliver of something akin to peace. The stars were out now, blazing in the clear night sky, unpolluted by city lights. They too were twinkling, show-offs. Competing with the fireflies, were they? Nature really does have a flair for the dramatic. I leaned back, trying to soak in the last vestiges of the jungle night, while simultaneously swatting at things only I could feel. Disembarking from the traditional longboat in the dark was another masterclass in maintaining one's balance, or in my case, failing to. I managed not to fall completely into the mud this time, which I counted as a significant personal victory. Just a minor slip, resulting in one beautifully mud-caked boot. Progress. I was practically a seasoned jungle explorer by now. Section 9. Reflections from a reluctant adventurer. Would I do it again? Let me think. No. Back at the lodge, the promise of a shower felt like discovering El Dorado. Peeling off the layers of damp, grimy clothing was an act of pure liberation. Washing away the accumulated sweat, mud, and insect repellent felt like a sacred ritual. The water pressure was questionable, but it was the best shower of my life, or at least the most desperately needed. Emerging clean, I felt almost human again. Almost. The lingering scent of DEET suggested I might be part mosquito repellent for the foreseeable future. I scrolled through the photos on my camera. Most were blurry smudges of darkness. A few captured an out-of-focus green leaf. One was an excellent shot of my own thumb. Capturing the magic of fireflies in the dark with a standard camera on a wobbly boat is harder than it looks, especially when your hands are shaky from fending off insects. The best images were the ones stored in my memory. My photographic skills clearly weren't going to win any awards. Brenda naturally had managed to get some stunning shots. Of course she did. So the big question, was it all worth it? The discomfort, the endless parade of insects, the questionable boat rides, the fashion disasters, the constant state of being slightly damp and vaguely irritated? For that brief incandescent period where the trees shimmered with 1,000 tiny lights. I paused. I considered. Surprisingly, a hesitant maybe formed in my mind.